So I think we can all agree that David Oistrakh was a great violinist. But was he self-taught? I don't think so. I mean, this was way before YouTube videos, so okay then. But who taught him? And just how did they teach him? Well, Oistrakh referred to Pyotr Stolyarsky as his first and only music teacher. Apparently, Stoliarsky believed that a child should be given the whole range of skills a performer needs, from chamber music to orchestra, right from the start. Stoliarsky started teaching in his apartment, and years later, the state took the idea over and turned it into a school for gifted children, the first of its kind in the Soviet Union. Stoliarsky called the school the Talent Factory. It was full of 80 to 90 excited youngsters crowding every room. Mothers sat out in the corridors waiting and discussing the problems of violin playing with great excitement and, by all accounts, remarkable knowledge. His working day lasted from early in the morning until late in the evening, but even so he couldn't devote the same amount of time to each of his pupils. So he would work with the most talented children sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, and the other students, some of whom had wealthy, snobbish parents, he would listen to without making any comments or attempts at improving their playing, sending them home, but first reminding them of the deadline for paying the tuition fee. So how did all this start? Well, Stoliarsky's family were klezmerim, meaning they were klezmer musicians, and this meant that he played with his family constantly and grew by listening rather than being shown. That said, his father was his first violin teacher, then Sevchik followed by Barchevitz, who had trained under Loop, and later Romali at the Moscow Conservatory. In Odessa, 2 more teachers shaped him, Młynarsky and Karl Bulka. Karl Bulka, himself a pupil of Binovich, but Młynarsky had studied with Auer, and Auer with Joachim. So through that one teacher, Stolyarsky's lineage runs straight back to Auer, and then to Joachim. But where did the idea of teaching the very young come from? I mean, he had no formal training in child psychology. Back then in Odessa, nobody did. So although his gift for teaching children seems largely instinctive, he was at least connected to Auer's pedagogical tradition through the teachings of Młynarsky. Stoliarsky rarely played during lessons and almost never demonstrated passages. But despite this, he found a way to correct mistakes very cleverly and artfully. He would say things like, "Don't rush, don't drive the bow so fast. Imagine it's your salary. Don't spend it all at once. Stretch it out." Or, "Who are you trying to overtake? Playing the violin isn't jumping on a horse. Show me beautiful music." He even said things to parents like, "Your boy is an ordinary genius child, and I don't need talented children. I need talented parents." These quips are really vivid, but I think this quote, attributed to Utesov, speaks the loudest about just who he was. What nincompoop says Ford invented the assembly line in America? Stoliarsky launched the assembly line in Odessa. Only it wasn't a factory of cars. It was a factory of diamonds. Well, out of all this, a legacy was born. In the 1937 Ysaÿe Competition in Brussels, his students essentially swept it. Oistrakh took first place, then Glels third, Goldstein fourth, and Fichtenholz sixth. The only outsider was Ricardo Odnipasov of Austria in second place, a pupil of Karl Flesch, who just happened to be a part of the jury. So what was it like to be a child in that building? Well, I asked Mark Piskunov about it, and he told me this. "I remember being 5 years old, sitting in the sled that my father had made at his factory, and he was pulling me past the Stoliarsky school. He looked at me and said how much he wished I could study there someday. Well, 2 years later, I was auditioning. There were maybe 800 applicants, and 3 rounds later, I was one of the very few. I was lucky enough to study at the Stoliarsky School for 8 years, and then continue my journey in New York with Delay, Stern, the Juilliard Quartet, Gallimir, and so many other great artists and colleagues. So not only did Stoliarsky understand how to develop artistry in children, his understanding outlived him, traveling from a sled on an Odessa street to a studio in New York.